Hello, everybody. This is Andrew Eisele. Thank you for tuning in to this third installment of our tutorials. This is the Reason effects. I've got some of the same instruments. It's basically the same session that I was working on in the Reason instruments overview. But right now I have a sequence right here that's going to be playing this, this synthesizer. Just going to turn it down a little bit. So as you can see, it's just a simple bass line that's playing here. Let's look at some of the different effects that we can use to really change this up. So there's a couple ways we can use effects. I can use effects as an insert. Now an insert, I'm going to hit tab and we'll look around at the back. So here we'll see there's our Subtractor, and we see that the main output is routed directly up to channel 1. So if I select the Subtractor, right, it has the blue outline all the way around it, and then I go up and I create an effect, like let's say this Scream 4 distortion. You will find that it auto cables for you, because you're basically letting Reason know that you want to insert this Scream 4 effect onto this Subtractor. So it goes from the audio output to the input of the Scream 4 and then out of the Scream 4, and that shows up on the channel 1. And you'll notice that the actual label says Scream, I think that says, yeah, it's like the left input. So now the sequence is now running through this distortion pedal. Now this has tons of presets in it. You can get its really interesting sounds. 3-inch speaker. This effects processor itself does all different types of distortion. You have some really cool controls for shaping it. You can see right now I'm on, I'll put it on fuzz and then I can control the tone. You also have a basic EQ with low, mids, and highs, and then it actually has a physical modeling. It models body, which basically gives it a different resonance. So depending on, you can really change the sound of what's playing. So if you wanted more of a guitar sound, you can certainly create that with this device. But it goes beyond that. Like if you wanted to run drums through it, you could. You could do warm saturations just to give like more like a subtle warmth to it. It's a really cool effect. But that's in essence how we can use an insert plugin. Let's say I had something, you know, really heavy in terms of distortion. So let's say I go back under instrument tweaks or even fidelity effects and listen to that. Now let's say I wanted to add a compressor. So what I can do is I select the Scream 4, create, and go down to a device like, say, the compressor limiter here. And if I tab to the back, you'll see it's now going out of the Scream 4 through the compressor, and then the compressor is routed to the mixer, and the label is changed, compressor left. So now we can kind of shape that sound a little bit. So your compressor makes your louder sound softer and your softer sounds louder. That's one way of using it. There's other compressors as well. There's the mastering compressor. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. It'll give me this message. If I'm deleting something, I'm going to say yes. We shall delete it. And let's take a look at the mastering compressor, which is under M-class compressor. And then from there, if we tab around, you'll see that it's routed through. Same thing. It'll say M compressor left. That's where it's going. This gives you a little bit more control. It does tax the processor a little bit more, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I've never really had any serious issues with running out of processing power. So I talk about what all these knobs and buttons do as we start going through like the mixing section. I'm just sort of demonstrating how to load up these different effects. So what we've been using for up until now are what we call insert effects. The signal is routed through a device and is replaced. It's inserted in the line in terms of the signal flow. Another type of effect that we can use are what we call time-based effects, and those are best utilized. You can use them like inserts, but they are best utilized as aux sends. So you would have a copy of the dry signal, and then the wet or the process signal would show up in its own area on its own track. So the way the mixers are set up, if we look on the back, you'll see aux here. Those are the aux send outs, and then the aux returns. So if I select this and I go to create digital delay line, you'll notice it creates the digital delay line. And you'll notice up here where it says return, it's automatically wired itself up. So aux send 1 is going into the delay, and then the output of the delay is being routed into aux return 1, which is right here. So now if I hit play, I'll turn it down a little bit. If I go to aux 1, which is right up here, so I'm going to pan it out. That's one way of using it. I don't necessarily have to use that particular sound. We can go to one of the drum tracks. That's the scratch effect. So here's that drum track. Now if I were to go up to my aux track, you can hear there's my delay. I mean that's the ReDrum track with that drum beat, that simple drum beat that I programmed. If I go up and grab the aux end and turn it up, and one interesting thing here is if I turn the feedback all the way up, it'll create a feedback loop that just keeps going on forever. I've already turned down the ReDrum, and what we're hearing is the infinite loop, that feedback that just keeps going on forever. Other effects, though. I could select this and go down to the advanced reverb. Now, the advanced reverb, this has some really awesome presets. We can go through some of them. Some of the big ones, like this kick bomb. This is a very large sounding reverb. Reverb is a way of creating a sense of space, an artificial sense of space. So as I bring up the ReDrum, turn down the delay, and now I'll bring up you can hear that reverb. These are just ways of really building out your tracks to add more depth and sort of ear candy, I guess, however you want to think about it. But there's lots of different effects in here that we can talk a little bit about. Just wanted to show you. Those are the two main ways of using effects. Now, if you're using a time-based effect, you'll notice here on this section of my the RV7000, there's a dry and a wet. Same thing with the digital delay, there's a dry and a wet. So if you were going to use it as an insert effect, you can control the dry being the unprocessed signal versus the wet, which is the processed signal. So you can sort of get the same effect as if you were using an aux send. But auxes offer some really great benefits because it doesn't affect the original sound. You have independent control over the levels, and you can send multiple tracks to that specific device. So if I had a really nice reverb and I'm using lots of different drum sounds, I can make sort of give this sort of simulation that all of those instruments are playing in the same space because they're all being routed to the same reverb, and sort of giving the characteristic of that room or whatever that algorithm that you're using is. So we'll talk more about this when we get through the the mixing. I just want to talk a little bit about some of the other effects that we have in here. Foldback distortion, it's a lot like the scream distortion. It's just less parameters. You have an envelope controlled filter. This is great for doing filter sweeps, swishy sounds, that kind of thing. Chorus and flange, phaser. And the parametric EQ. Now, EQs, you have a EQ that's built onto your mixer. This is a 2-band shelf EQ. So you have treble and bass. So if you ever needed to cut something, if something's too bassy, I can turn on my EQ and remove all the bass. Or all the highs. Or I can increase the highs. Incidentally, all these things that I'm doing can be automated. But in terms of the EQ, if I wanted to add this EQ to, say, an instrument, like, say, the ReDrum, I can select the ReDrum, go down and add the 2-band parametric EQ, or I can even use the M-class equalizer, which gives you several bands. So, and this also is a little bit more visual. There's a shelf filter. You have, so if you see here, there's a low cut filter. There's a high and low shelf. Shelves essentially increase from a certain frequency on up. And then you have 2 fully parametric EQs, which I like to use if I really want to dial in where that kick drum is. You can get quite surgical with it. It is a mastering EQ, so it's designed to be a little bit more subtle, but you can still use it quite effectively in terms of sound shaping. Another great effect is the vocoder. It's how you can make robot voices, sort of percussive synthesizer driven sounds, that kind of stuff. Really cool stuff. We definitely I do sort of a tutorial on that in the advanced book, how to set it up and how it works, but definitely worth checking out. So in our next tutorial, let's take a look at the basic recording and editing in Reason 5.